I used to babysit a lot in high school, mostly for family friends or neighbors. It was easy money, and most of the time, the kids were asleep within an hour of me getting there. But there's one night I still can't explain. One that made me stop babysitting for good. It was a Friday night, and I had agreed to watch an 8-year-old boy named Jake while his parents went out for dinner and a movie. They lived in a quiet, older neighborhood on the edge of town, where the houses sat farther apart, separated by large yards and clusters of trees. Their house was a 2-story colonial-style home with a long, dimly lit driveway, and something about it always felt off. Not creepy exactly, but just wrong in a way I couldn't put my finger on. The night started out normal. Jake was a quiet kid, more interested in his video games than talking to me, which was fine. Around 9 p.m., I got him tucked into bed, turned off his light, and went downstairs to the living room. His parents had told me I could watch TV or help myself to snacks, so I settled in with my phone and a bag of popcorn. It wasn't long before I started hearing things. At first, it was just soft creaking from upstairs, but I brushed it off as the house settled in. Old houses make noises, but then I heard what sounded like faint footsteps in the hallway above me. Light, deliberate, like someone was moving carefully. My stomach tightened. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. Telling myself I was being paranoid, I turned the volume back up. A few minutes passed. Then, clear as day, I heard a soft thump, like a door closing. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the baby monitor app Jake's parents had set up. It had a night vision camera in his room, so I checked the feed. Jake was sound asleep, tucked under his covers. The door to his room was slightly open, the way I had left it. Nothing seemed out of place. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I decided to check upstairs. Maybe Jake had gotten up and gone to the bathroom without me hearing. I grabbed the small flashlight on the kitchen counter, just in case. As I reached the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out before me, dimly lit by the soft glow of a nightlight near the bathroom. The doors to the master bedroom and a guest room were closed. Jake's door was still slightly ajar. I was about to turn back when something caught my eye. The attic door, the kind that pulls down from the ceiling with a ladder, was slightly open. Maybe only an inch, but enough for me to see the dark void beyond it. I knew it hadn't been like that earlier. I stood frozen, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, came the sound of breathing. Slow, shallow breathing, coming from the attic. I took a step back, my mind racing. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, but I felt someone up there, watching, listening. Then the breathing stopped, and something in the darkness shifted. That was all I needed. I turned and ran straight to Jake's room, shutting the door behind me and locking it. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone as I called his parents. His mom picked up after a few rings. I whispered that I thought someone was in the house. I could tell she didn't believe me at first, but the fear in my voice must have convinced her to take me seriously. She told me to stay put and that they were calling the police. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat in the dark next to Jake's bed, barely breathing, straining to hear any movement outside the door. Then, footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Moving down the hall, stopping right outside the door. I covered my mouth with my hand, my entire body tense. I could feel someone standing there just inches away. The doorknob rattled once, twice. Then, silence. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard the wail of sirens outside. The front door burst open, and heavy boots thundered through the house, A voice shouted, "Police!" And only then did I finally move. The officers searched the house. They found the attic door wide open. The dust on the floor was disturbed, and there were footprints leading from the attic to the hallway, but they never found anyone. Jake's parents were horrified. His dad swore the attic had been locked for years, and no one ever went up there. Nothing was stolen, and there were no signs of forced entry. But someone had been there, watching, waiting. I never babysat for them again. In fact, I never babysat at all after that. I don't know who or what was up in that attic, and I never want to find out. I used to babysit a lot in high school, mostly for family friends or neighbors. It was easy money, and I'd never had any real issues until the night I watched the Miller kids. The Millers were new to the neighborhood, and their house was on the edge of town, where the streets were darker and quieter. It was an old Victorian home, the kind that looked beautiful in the daytime but eerie at night. When I arrived, Mrs. Miller greeted me warmly, while Mr. Miller hurried to get ready. They had 2 kids, Lily, who was 6, and Tommy, who was 4. Both seemed sweet, but a little shy. Before leaving, Mrs. Miller gave me the usual rundown. Bedtime was 8:30, snacks were in the fridge, and they'd be home by midnight. Then she hesitated. "Oh, one more thing," she added, glancing at her husband. "If you hear Lily talking to herself, don't be alarmed. She has an imaginary friend." I smiled and nodded, not thinking much of it. The night started off normal. We played a few games, watched some cartoons, and had snacks. Around 8:15, I took them upstairs to brush their teeth and get ready for bed. That's when things got weird. While tucking Lily in, I heard her whispering. At first I thought she was saying goodnight to her stuffed animals, but then I heard something that made my skin crawl. "Shh," she whispered. "She'll hear you." I froze. "Lily, who are you talking to?" She turned to me with wide eyes. "My friend. She likes to watch." I forced a laugh. "Well, your friend needs to go to sleep too, okay?" She just nodded and pulled the covers up to her chin. I turned off the light and checked on Tommy, who was already fast asleep. Then I went downstairs to watch TV, trying to shake the uneasy feeling creeping over me. About an hour later, I heard soft creaking from upstairs. I muted the TV and listened. The house was old. Creaks and groans were normal, but this sounded different. It was rhythmic, like slow, deliberate footsteps. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, creeping up the stairs as quietly as I could. As I reached the top, I peeked down the hallway. Lily's door was slightly open. I pushed it wider. She was sitting up in bed staring at the corner of her room. My stomach tightened. "Lily, what are you doing?" "She's standing there," she said matter-of-factly. I swallowed hard. "Who?" "My friend." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I stepped into the room and shined my flashlight into the corner. Nothing, just shadows. "There's no one there, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Lily shook her head. "You're not supposed to see her." Something about the way she said it made my blood run cold. I forced a smile. "It's late. You need to go back to sleep." She didn't argue, just laid back down. I left the door open a crack and went back downstairs, my heart pounding. I tried to convince myself it was just a kid's overactive imagination. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Then, around 11:30, I heard footsteps again. This time, they were on the stairs. My breath caught in my throat. Both kids were in bed. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a heavy lamp, and stood frozen in the living room, listening. Footsteps reached the bottom step and stopped. Silence. I held my breath, waiting. Then, ever so slowly, I heard the sound of something scraping against the hardwood floor. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned on every light I could reach and called Mr. Miller. He picked up after 2 rings. "Everything okay?" I struggled to keep my voice calm. "Hey, I think I heard someone in the house." There was a long pause. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Is Lily awake?" I glanced toward the stairs. I don't know. Why?" He let out a slow breath. "Just don't talk to her imaginary friend." My stomach dropped. "Why?" A door creaked upstairs. "She's not imaginary," he whispered. The call disconnected. I grabbed my things and bolted to the front door, only stopping when I heard a giggle from the top of the stairs. Lily was standing there smiling. "She likes you." I've babysat for a lot of families over the years, but there's one job I still can't think about without getting chills. It happened when I was 16, watching a little boy named Noah at a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. His mum, Mrs. Henderson, was really nice, mid-30s, well put together, the type of person who seemed to have everything in order. She gave me the usual rundown before leaving. Noah's bedtime was 8:30. There were snacks in the kitchen, and I could watch TV once he was asleep. Pretty standard. The only weird thing, she hesitated before heading out and said, "Oh, and if you hear knocking from upstairs, just ignore it. It happens sometimes." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her expression stayed serious. She just told me not to worry and left. At first, everything was fine. Noah was a sweet kid, quiet, but polite. We played some board games, watched a cartoon, and when 8:30 rolled around, I put him to bed without a fuss. By 9 a.m., I was curled up on the couch scrolling through my phone. Then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It came from upstairs, soft but deliberate. I froze. My first thought was that Noah had gotten up, but when I checked the baby monitor, he was still in bed, sound asleep. I told myself it was the house settling. Old pipes, maybe. But then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. This time, it was louder, closer, coming from the end of the hall upstairs. My stomach twisted. The way Mrs. Henderson had warned me about it, like it was a normal thing, didn't sit right. I tried to ignore it, but then Noah's voice crackled through the baby monitor. "She's back." My blood ran cold. I grabbed the monitor and whispered, "Noah." "Who's back?" Silence. Then, in the quietest, smallest voice, he said, "The lady in the closet." I swear my heart stopped. I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me to grab Noah and run, but I didn't want to scare him if, somehow, this was just his imagination. I forced myself to move. Slowly, I crept up the stairs, my breath coming in short, shaky gasps. Noah's room was at the end of the hall, past the spot where I'd heard the knocking. As I walked past the last door before his room, I felt it, a rush of cold air leaking out from the tiny gap beneath the closet door. Someone was in there. I knew it. I hurried into Noah's room, trying to act normal. He was sitting up in bed, wide-eyed. I whispered, "Stay quiet." Then from the hallway, knock, knock, knock. I nearly screamed. Noah whimpered, clutching his blanket. I didn't know what to do. My phone was downstairs. The landline was in the kitchen. I was frozen, terrified to even move. Then the knocking stopped, and the closet door creaked open. I didn't see who or what was inside. I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed Noah, bolted down the stairs, and ran out the front door, not stopping until I was standing in the driveway, heart pounding out of my chest. I called Mrs. Henderson from my cell, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped it. She picked up after 2 rings, sounding annoyed, until I told her what happened. The line went silent. Then she sighed and said, "I told you to ignore it." That was it. No panic, no confusion, just acceptance. She told me to take Noah to the neighbors and that she'd be home soon. I didn't ask questions. I did as she said. I never went back to that house. I don't know who or what was in that closet, and I don't want to know. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear it. Knock, knock, knock.